You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
The first podcast of the off season. As sad as I am to report to all of you. Sam already knew that. You knew that, right, Sam?
I did. You are not breaking any news to me
aware.
about the status of the Major League Baseball season.
It's over. Major League Baseball season is over. Your 2020 World Series champions, the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have won the World Series now in, I believe, if I read this correctly yesterday, the two shortest seasons in Major League history. 1988, strike-shortened year. In 2020, a pandemic-shortened year. Last two times the Dodgers have won the World Series, they've come on some crazy circumstances. Obviously, this one way crazier than anything else. But congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have been chasing and have been so close for the last, what feels like decade, but especially the last 4 years. And finally, that fan base, for the first time since the late Reagan years, is celebrating a World Series title just a few weeks after celebrating an NBA title, which if you would have told somebody at the beginning of the year, oh, the Lakers are going to win the NBA Finals, then a couple of weeks later the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, that would have been very confusing.
Yes, it would have been. Your question might have been like, why'd they move up the World Series?
Right, exactly. Why is the World Series in June?
Yeah.
But big congratulations. We're going to talk World Series stuff as the show gets rolling along today. We've got a lot coming up. Sam was kind enough to handle two segments to follow this. I was indisposed today, did not get a chance to get in on our interview segment, but we'll talk about that coming up here in a little bit. Before we get into any of it, though, this is, if you are hearing us on Thursday or Friday or Saturday or whenever over the weekend, this is coming down to the wire for your last chance to vote in the 2020 election. And we, of course, implore you to do so. Exercise your civil duty. If you're in a state where you would ordinarily be mailing your ballot, Postal Service now telling people that they're running very slow on moving things around. So you've run out of time to mail your ballot. So you can locate drop boxes, do that kind of stuff on states' various websites, secretaries of state or voting departments, whatever it is. Locate your ballot box drop area, or you can go vote in person. You can do whatever you'd like, depending on your voting situation in your state. But go vote. It's an important thing. And even if you're somebody who's young and listening to this and thinking like, well, what difference is my vote going to make? It really does. And you know what else? You feel good when you do it. There's a good feeling of accomplishment when you finish off a ballot and you drop it off in a box, or you go to a polling place and vote, whatever it is. But just do it.
Yeah. I mean, here in Brooklyn, I voted early in person. Every state's going to be different. Tyler, I know Colorado is a very mail-in ballot heavy state, which is great, especially right now. Some of you might have requested your ballots to be delivered to you, and you may have already sent them back, or as Tyler said, dropped them off in a ballot box or brought them to your local board of elections. And that's great. If it's still sitting on your counter, get that done. Get it done now. Put us on pause. We'll still be here. It's okay. Yeah. It really doesn't take that long to actually fill out the ballot, but there's nothing more satisfying that I've done this year. And it's been a very crazy year, but there's nothing more satisfying I've done than dropping my ballot into the Scantron here in Brooklyn, and it's saying your vote has been counted.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a very satisfying feeling. I know.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
At least here in New York and other places as well, Massachusetts, where my parents are voting, they have like a vote tracker. So if you have voted by mail, you can find out where your ballot is. It reminds me a little bit of the Domino's tracker, but in the most democratic way. I love it so much that they actually tell you the post office has your ballot. It's been delivered. It's been counted. That's exactly how democracy should work. And democracy should work as a participation sport. We are
right.
We are very sports based here. We are very results based here as well. And it might feel like there's two teams here. but there is one country, and the way we make that country better is actually having your voice heard. We saw this happen in 2016. The election, the popular vote was decided by 3 million votes, and that person ended up losing. The vote was actually really decided by a couple thousand in maybe 3 states. So if you live in a swing state, it's really important to vote. If you don't live in a swing state, here in New York, my vote still counted because there is the Working Families Party, which was under threat of going away. And even if there weren't many options for me to vote, still voting one way allows that party to still exist. Tyler, I know Colorado has a ton of propositions, which I'm actually very jealous of.
Yeah.
Talking about.
Very lengthy ballot this year. In addition to a bunch of local stuff in Denver and state stuff, we also had a bunch of judges, the kinds of things that you just like, I don't know how to vote for all this stuff. But there are, for example, we've got a local news organization here called Denverite, which is now owned by Colorado Public Radio. And they did a tremendous voter guide, which included stuff about all the judges and all the propositions and all the amendments and all that type of stuff. It's so easy to be informed, but make sure that you are being informed by trusted outlets, such as, reputable local news sources like that, like a public radio station or a journalistic outlet that is of some repute. But there are a lot of good ways to get yourself the knowledge base that you need in order to vote in a way that aligns with your values. And we just really encourage you to do it. Like Sam said, it should be a participatory thing and not a spectator thing. And it's really important. So with all that being said, let us know if you voted because you heard on the show that, you need to get it done and you had kind of forgotten. Let us know. Podcast at milb.com. And that's the email address, right?
It is. Yes. Podcast at milb.com.
I have not said that email address in a while. I guess I kind of forgot. And yeah, let us know because it is really kind of fun. I mean, we have sort of the same thing, a ballot tracker, but I actually got email notifications when I think I dropped my ballot off on, let's say, a Wednesday, and on Thursday got an email that it had been accepted at the elections division. And then on Friday, got an email that said it had been counted. And that's pretty cool. Like that, you really feel like, oh, there are systems that work. That's kind of neat. So just go do it. And with that, we'll talk some baseball for the rest of the show. The 2020 World Series is in the books. And in 6 games, the Los Angeles Dodgers do have that World Series title that snaps a 30-plus year drought. And Sam, this was a series that really games 1 through 3, not a lot of twists and turns. And then game 4 had enough turns for an entire World Series. And now that this thing is wrapped up, the Dodgers obviously taking advantage of what has become a very suspect decision over the last now nearly 24 hours from Kevin Cash with the Tampa Bay Rays taking out one of our best friends of MILB.com, Blake Snell, in a spot where it seemed like, why would you ever lift this guy from a game? And Kevin Cash said, hold up, let me do something. That changed the dynamic of game 6 when the Rays were leading 1-0. Dodgers rally, take the lead 2-1 in that inning. They grab a 3-1 lead late, thanks to Mookie Betts with his final homer on his final hit of the postseason. But this series, it kind of felt for a while as though the Rays, being this plucky underdog, they were going to somehow figure out that they could push it to 7. It was a series that sort of felt like it deserved 7 games. But I don't think that it ever really felt like there was any other logical outcome other than, well, the Dodgers are obviously the much better team and they're going to win this.
Yeah, I mean, they were, I don't want to say deeper, because one of the strengths about the Rays was their depth and just how there wasn't an obvious place where they really tailed off. They just kept coming at you with different things other than the offense. The offense really struggled in this series, but the Dodgers had the high peaks. They had Clayton Kershaw, which hopefully we never have to hear again about him not coming through in the postseason. He was an MVP candidate in this World Series. They went out and got Mookie Betts, not breaking any news there. Might have been the best overall player in these playoffs. I might have given him my World Series MVP vote, to be honest with you, because of the things he did on defense and base running, beyond just getting us all tacos. But he became a real leader for that team. Corey Seager was playing out of his mind. Cody Bellinger is a former MVP, yada, 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 yada. The Dodgers were just as deep and as strong as any team is going to be in Major League Baseball. And You talked about it at the beginning of the show, Tyler, about how they continually have tried to get here. They fell to the Astros in the World Series. They fell to the Red Sox in the World Series. They fell to the Nationals last year's playoffs, the eventual World Series champions. They kept trying to get close, and you knew that they were going to break through at a certain point. And it to one point, it almost doesn't feel sad. But the fact that this came in a 60-game season, there are going to be people who are going to try to attach an asterisk to that. I still think if this was a 162-game season, the Dodgers would have been the strongest. We would have seen maybe a Josiah Gray. We would have seen more at-bats out of Keibert Ruiz. We would have seen more at-bats certainly out of Gavin Lux, and maybe even Edwin Rios. That depth would have come through in other ways. And the Dodgers could have been a 105-win team for all we know. But they dominated in what could have been a really strange season, and then they continued that dominance through the postseason, including coming back in the NLCS, and then not really steamrolling over the Rays, but just going punch for punch, taking a game like that Game 4, which could have been demoralizing and crushing, and coming back and winning the series in 6. It was really, really impressive stuff. And as you're going to hear, coming up in my interview with Travis Barbary, who was supposed to be the Oklahoma City manager this year and ended up coaching at the alternate site at USC. The Dodgers have been really set up for this for a while. They feel like they're continually set up to do this for multiple years. Signing Mookie Betts to an extension is a big reason beyond that, but Clayton Kershaw is locked up for a while. They still have Corey Seager for another year. Cody Bellinger is not going to be a free agent until 2024. And then the other pieces that I already mentioned that are going to keep coming through that system. The Dodgers aren't going anywhere. And for them to finally get that crowning achievement really feels special. It honestly reminds me a little bit of the Brooklyn Dodgers at the middle of the last century, reading up on those teams and how they continually got back to the World Series. And Jackie Robinson only ended up winning one, but they got that one, and that one is important, and that means a lot to the city, and that means a lot to that organization. And it shows that, hey, if you're willing to pour resources into the game, if you're willing to strategize certain ways and be flexible both with your money and the way you look at the game and the way you're trying to fit, not necessarily a formula, but be flexible with how you use your pitchers and how you use your best hitters and how you use your defense. Good things can happen. And that's what the Dodgers proved this year. We don't have to take some crazy thing out of this. It was a team with a large payroll who was very good at developing, who won the World Series. That's going to be good any year.
Yeah, and I think there is a certain justice in a team that does have a large payroll, does devote so many resources to its international scouting department, its amateur scouting department, its analytics, its player development side, and yes, does spend money to lock up players like Mookie Betts, a player that it acquired for really a pretty reasonable sum of money in the trade, or of talent, I should say. I mean, when you look back at that trade, you kind of think like the Dodgers got Mookie Betts out of that deal. They got one of the best players on the planet in that deal. But then they locked him up for 13 years, and that's a pretty big step as well in that equation. But there is something just about a franchise that does all of those things in the pursuit of a World Series title, getting to win that World Series title. This isn't the early 2000s Yankees or Red Sox or that conversation where it's just who is the biggest free agent this year? Can we go out and acquire that person over the offseason, throw a boatload of money at them? The Dodgers, there was a tweet today, and I wish I remembered who posted it because they deserve the credit, but every single game started in the postseason this year was started by a pitcher who had spent his entire professional career in the Dodgers organization. So this is not one of those teams from 20 years ago that people got mad about, oh, they bought a championship. This really isn't that with the Dodgers. They build themselves very differently. The other thing that's kind of funny is how many people were trying to dunk on the Rays for, oh, look at the analytics. They failed because Kevin Cash took Blake Snell out. The Dodgers are probably the most analytically inclined franchise in baseball. Just because they spend a lot of money and it's not their only form of trying to figure out how to be competitive does not mean that they are not analytically minded. So keep that in mind with your hot takes about Blake Snell being taken out of that game. But this is a fascinating series. We would be remiss if we did not point out Game 4. in which Brett Phillips, one of our favorite guys from MILB.com, lit up the sports world for a night with one of the wackiest walk-off plays in the history of baseball, and certainly in the history of the World Series. Randy Arozarena, who was the breakout star of the playoffs, scoring the craziest run to win a World Series game. One of my favorite images, I mean, obviously everybody's favorite image, I think, from that game, if not from the World Series in total, is Brett Phillips running around with his arms outstretched like an airplane in the outfield, and just that pure emotion. I equally loved Randy Arozarena laying on home plate and slapping it repeatedly with his hand with that giant smile across his face. Like, that was a moment, not to extrapolate too much from a sports moment, but it felt good to feel good about something. You know what I mean? In 2020, and it was the same watching Clayton Kershaw burst out of the bullpen and throw his arms up in the air, and that emotional release. Sports are that distraction in life, and there is so much, obviously, to still be debated about whether or not we deserve sports in a year like this. But man, it felt good to have a couple of moments where it just, you were able to lock into something that was happy.
Yeah, I mean, Brett Phillips really did say it best. Baseball is fun.
Yeah.
And that was, and Tyler, the way we know Brett Phillips, I mean, you and I were texting after the game, during the game, knowing Brett Phillips was coming up and just being like, I am so nervous about what this could, because he was left off the LCS roster. They brought him back on because there were going to be off days. They dropped a pitcher to let Brett Phillips be on there. He even said he's the last man on the bench. He's there basically for pinch running and defensive ability. He said he figured that
Kevin Cash looked at him and went, oh no. He realized that he had to pinch hit somebody.
Yeah. So like he was already in the game as a defensive replacement. I mean, Brett Phillips has a great arm. If you ever get a chance to watch him play defense, it is special. But, somebody who's played in the Astros organization and the Royals organization and been traded to the Brewers organization as well. And then now he's with the Rays when he was moved basically because he had no options remaining. And he's a Florida guy as well. Didn't grow up that far from St. Pete, going to Seminole High School and getting, your first World Series at bat and just thinking like, you do that in the backyard and you hit a home run, right? You hit a walk-off home run, you go around the bases, you do the airplane and you go crazy, but he didn't try to do that. What he just tried to do, especially after getting two calls, I don't remember who the home plate umpire was that night, but the two strikes called against him were like just off the plate. Yeah. They weren't guaranteed strikes. That's really tough to take against Kenley Jansen, who at one point, I know he's had his ups and downs this year, but at one point was the best closer in baseball, arguably. And to get two strikes against that and then just make contact, put it up the middle. Chris Taylor boots it, throws it in. Will Smith boots it. Randy Arozarena, like you said, Tyler, loses it coming down the third base line and then pulls off one of the most athletic plays of this World Series, and that he falls but immediately gets up and starts moving again and doesn't force the error, but like it could have been, he would have been dead to rights on the base pass for going to extra innings. Instead, he's right back up, and when it gets past Will Smith, he's in there touching home plate, slapping it a bunch of times, just making sure everybody knows he scored the game-winning run. It was so much fun. It's indicative of what this Rays team is. As we say, Brett Phillips was probably the 28th man on the roster. Usually there are not 28 men on a postseason roster. For him to come through that way, again, first World Series at bat, and knowing what we know about Brett Phillips, just somebody who thoroughly enjoys the game of baseball, tries to have as much fun with it as he can. When he was left off the LCS roster, he called himself like the inspirational coach, I think, holding up signs for his teammates, like see ball, hit ball, holding up, what was it? Rakes.
Randy, rakes all night, day, year.
Yeah. Just fun stuff like that. Like he keeps things loose, and at a time when things are so analytically inclined, and I have nothing against that whatsoever. I'm not trying to get on any high horse, but having somebody who's just being like, listen, you are a good baseball player. The reason why you are in the World Series is because you are good at what you do. Trust that. I'm here for you. I support you. And I share in your success was really, really neat. And to see him get his own success was really, really cool too. So as much as this is a sport, there is a winner at the end, there is a loser at the end. The Dodgers won, the Rays lost. This was a really fun World Series, all in all. And something I think both fans of both organizations can take something away from.
Speaking of that, these organizations, we talked last week, very well positioned to move forward from here. We know how much talent is in that Dodger system. The Rays, the same, despite what the one all caps yelling reply to your tweet said, which said that the Rays don't even have a top 15 system in minor league baseball. Sometimes don't tweet. But these two organizations, probably the top two, if not two of the top 3 or 4 systems in all of baseball by all accounts. Right now, there are a lot more questions about what the Dodgers will look like in 2021 than what the Rays will look like in 2021. There's not much changing on that Rays roster as it looks right now. The Dodgers, Justin Turner will be a free agent after this season. And that is a topic that now comes with a whole different conversation. And I feel like it is probably something that we should touch on before we talk about where these teams go from here. It was certainly pretty jarring to see Justin Turner on the field after that. I actually was doing the write-up of our final Randy Arozarena story, which kind of meandering here, but shout out to MILB.com's Joe Bloss, who came up with the tweet of the postseason. He said on Twitter last week, quote, "There's this neat new feature on MILB.com where every time you refresh the homepage, another story about Randy Arozarena appears," which is pretty true. So I was writing one up yesterday and had the TV on mute. Totally missed Kevin Burkhardt saying that Justin Turner had tested positive for COVID-19, and that was the reason why he had been pulled. Then all of a sudden, I see a tweet from Alana Rizzo, the Dodgers sideline reporter, saying that she was heartbroken for Justin Turner. But in the tweet were pictures of Justin Turner celebrating on the field with the World Series trophy. So I didn't really get the sentiment of being heartbroken for him. Major League Baseball came out with a statement today about that whole situation. There was so much going on last night in that postseason situation. I got done with my work shift at midnight. I don't think I fell asleep until about 1:30.
Yeah. I mean, that's 1:30 your time. Like I probably didn't fall asleep till 3:30 my time either. What happened last night after the game, and details are still coming out. MLB put out a statement today that basically said, that Justin Turner had a test that was inconclusive the day before the World Series. They found out about that during the game. They tested the one that was the day of. So on Tuesday, they tested that. That came back positive. They told the Dodgers he had to be pulled off the field. He was pulled off the field and put into some sort of isolation. But then when MLB security, according to the statement, told him he had to stay in isolation, he disagreed and somehow, and this is somehow is doing a lot of work here, I understand that, somehow got to the field, was able to take pictures, was able to hold the trophy, be with his teammates, all that kind of stuff. It's a really rough look for Justin Turner, for the Dodgers, for baseball as a whole, really, to have something like that happen. We're going to see what details come out, like who allowed him to get out there. Did he sneak out there by himself? Why wasn't he put right back into isolation? It's really tough because I know you at home, many of you at home at the very least, have been doing your best to make sure that this pandemic is somewhat contained. And right now we're going through it as rough as we ever did in the spring, as rough as we ever did in the middle of the summer. The numbers are jumping all across the country, and baseball, to its credit, don't get me wrong, did a very good job during these playoffs. 0 positive tests until Justin Turner. The bubbles were working, and I don't know how he got it. I'm not here to judge that. But once you know you are positive, you need to stay away from other people, or else risk spreading it to other people and having them spread it to other people as well.
Kind of how viruses work.
Exactly. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I've heard a lot of them speak. I understand that much. And when Dave Roberts is a cancer survivor and is right there, it's really tough. It's irresponsible to do that. We're going to see what's going to come. MLB says it's investigating further, and there might be further punishment for Justin Turner. We don't know the details of that, and I'm not going to speculate on what that could be or what it should be. But it was a really downer way to end. Again, what we talked about at the beginning of the segment was a very fun World Series and a very just World Series in terms of the best team coming away with it. And then Justin Turner in his own way is a great story. And the way he was, basically left out to dry by the Mets and had come up through the red system and all that. And just changed his swing and became one of the best Dodgers over the last couple of years during their really dominant run. I understand that there is that inkling to allow him to be out there to celebrate because of that enlarged role he's had with the club. But these are not normal times. There are people who are canceling weddings. They are pushing off big birthday parties. They're doing things that should be once in a lifetime activities. They're pushing those things off because of the times we live in. It's great that the Dodgers won the World Series. That feels like a once in a lifetime activity, but he's still going to get the ring. He's still going to have a chance to take pictures with that trophy 2 weeks from now, once he clears all tests. I know he would like to be on the field, but it's tough to sanction that type of decision. And we'll see what else is to come of this in the coming days and weeks, because it feels like it's not going to be going away for a while.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's very well said. And obviously a lot of the baseball stuff sort of went by the wayside when that whole situation came up. But we're a baseball podcast. And as we head into the offseason, these teams and where they move from here is a big topic of discussion. And we touched on the Rays, and that'll likely be the same group. They could add Wander Franco, the game's top prospect, although we didn't see him at all this year. So I would imagine the chances we see Wander Franco in short order, even if everything is back to normal by opening day of 2021, can't imagine. I think we'll probably see him AA, AAA next year. But on the other side, the Dodgers do face more questions. These two teams right now, as they are positioned going into this offseason, what are the biggest things out there from your point of view?
I think for the Dodgers, it's just trying to figure out what they do with the Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin. One of the things they did this offseason or this postseason with both of those guys was kind of use them in Franken starter roles.
I like that term.
Yeah. I think it was Lindsay Adler of The Athletic was like, what do we call these? Because they were starters for sure, but they were also kind of acting as relievers and openers with the way they were going. I mean, Gonsolin only pitched, an inning and 2/3 in Game 6, and he was doing okay. He gave up the homer to Randy Arozarena, and he allowed 5 base runners with 3 hits and 2 walks. But maybe normally a starter gets to work through that. He didn't get a chance to do that. And Dustin May also was working on short leashes during his time in the postseason. So what do they do with those guys? Do those guys become the number 3 and number 4 starter? And Julio Urias, who became almost an elite reliever, basically, he has starting potential as well. So do they roll with Kershaw, Buehler, May, Gonsolin, and Urias as their rotation next year? Do they, try to figure something else out? That's going to be really fascinating for me to watch. David Price is also supposed to come back. He opted out of 2020. He will be returning for 2021 if all goes well. So going to be really fascinated to see how they figure out those roles for their pitchers, because on the offensive side, most of the big names are coming back. Corey Seager is going into his last year before free agency. Gavin Lux is still around. I feel like I still need to remind a lot of people about that. It was really downer of a year for him, getting a late start to summer camp and then being left off the opening day roster and then being left off many of the postseason rosters as well. Is he a shortstop? Is he a second baseman? They're going to have to figure that out. But maybe, just maybe, if Corey Seager either takes a downturn or they decide, listen, we're going to let you go sign elsewhere, and Gavin Lux is ready for shortstop, maybe he gets a longer look next year as an audition. It's going to be fascinating to see how that works. For the Rays, I mean, it's going to be, how do you fit this next wave? That's never been an issue for them. Whenever you think like, oh, they're pretty full. I don't know how this is going to work. Like they find spots. So Wander Franco, you might say, well, Willy Adames is their shortstop, and he used to be a top prospect. He's been there for a while. I know he had his struggles this postseason, getting the final out of the World Series. That must sting. But Willy Adames is a decent shortstop. But Wander Franco is coming up, and he's a much better prospect than Willy Adames ever was. So does Adames move? Does Franco move? I mean, how does that going to go? Are we going to look at a new Brandon Lau situation? Brent Honeywell Jr. seems to be healthy at the end of the year. He was part of the taxi squad. I would love to see him be healthy for all of 2021. They're going to have to figure out a spot for him. They're going to potentially lose Charlie Morton. He's a free agent this year. Or no, excuse me. He has 1 year left on his deal. But he's been kind of hedging on whether he's going to return or not. So we'll see how that's going to go. it's just going to be really fascinating to see what the Rays do with this farm system, and knowing that so many good guys are coming up. I didn't even mention Vidal Brujan. He was also a member of the taxi squad. He's knocking on the door. Brendan McKay missed all of this year due to injuries and surgery. What is he going to be like when he comes back? Because I know they would have loved to have used him either in an opener or starter or even relief role instead of using some of the other arms that they did. So, yeah, the Rays, the big question is, what are they going to do when their prospects are ready? But I'm not worried about that. They will answer that in due time.
So congratulations again to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who were recording on Wednesday night, as we usually do. Kenley Jansen just tweeted a picture of himself with a World Series trophy on a plane, so I guess they're letting him out of Dallas. The story is apparently just Justin Turner and his wife are not allowed to leave, which it's not really how viruses work, but we'll see. Hopefully everybody's okay in that situation, because especially somebody like Kenley Jansen, a guy who's dealt with a heart issue in his career. And, you've got a part owner who's, dealt with HIV and Magic Johnson, and a cancer survivor as your manager. And it's a reminder for all of us to be careful, be smart, wash your hands, keep your distance. We do not have a vaccine yet. We do not have this thing under control, as was so very eloquently confirmed to all of us this week, that there are people in positions of power who don't even really care about controlling it anymore. Please just keep being smart. The holidays are coming up. This is a tough time of year, regardless, for a lot of people. And it's just important for all of us to look out for each other, which is something that I don't feel like we've really done very well at all. But that's a soapbox for a different time. So we'll wrap up this first segment of the show before the show. Coming up, Sam, tell us about our interview segment for this week.
Yeah, so this is, as I mentioned before, this is a discussion with Travis Barbary, who was meant to be the AAA Oklahoma City manager this year. Unfortunately, we didn't have a Pacific Coast League season. So that means he actually got to work with a lot of players out of the alternate site at USC. We get into that, what it was like to do that. And also, he's been in this organization since 1994. So he has some stories about what it's like, working in the player development department now compared to what it was like coming up when he was signed as a catcher. I'll let him tell that story here in a little bit. But really excited we got him, because it's the perfect encapsulation, of where the Dodgers used to be, where they are now, how they got there, and what could be coming next. So this is me talking to Travis Barbary.
This past year has shown us that without your health, you have nothing. If you're not well, you can't work, look after yourself, or take care of your family. You can't enjoy the life you've worked so hard to build. That's why you need to prioritize taking care of your long-term health today, before it goes from good to bad to worse. So invest in your long-term health with Forward. Forward is intelligent medicine with a personal touch. Their doctors are dedicated to catching top killers like cancer and heart disease early, before it's too late. And catching them early could save you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run. Everyone's health history is different, which is why Forward doctors personalize a health plan with you, based on your genetics, lifestyle, and biometrics, to achieve long-term results and ensure nothing gets missed. It's time to invest in a doctor that's invested in you. Go to GoForward.com today to protect your future health. That's GoForward.com. GoForward.com.
Well, we're very pleased this week to be joined on the show before the show by Oklahoma City manager and a guy who was at Dodgers alternate training site this year at USC, Travis Barbary. He's been in the Dodger system for a long time, and this is definitely a special time to be a part of the Dodger system. But Travis, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. And as I mentioned, you have a kind of lengthy history with the Dodgers. Kind of trace that history through the system. You've had multiple roles. As we said, your most recent was manager of AAA Oklahoma City. Obviously, there was no PCL season this year, so you were working out of the alt site. But how far back do you go with the Dodgers, and take us through that journey?
Yeah, my first experience with the Dodgers, 1994, I signed as a free agent. My former junior college coach, Lon Joyce, had began scouting with the Dodgers in 1992, and he called me before spring training of 94 and said they needed some catchers. Basically, I was known as a 911 guy. They didn't have enough catchers to get through spring training, and so he called and asked if I'd be interested in going. I had played independent ball the year before, and of course, I jumped at the opportunity and didn't really know what to expect. Got down there and kind of was under the impression that, once spring training was over, that I'd probably get sent home. And as fortune would have it, they needed me to stay. Went through extended spring training and ended up going to Great Falls, Montana, in the Pioneer League. And not long after, they made me a player coach, which means I wasn't a very good player. So they wanted me to start coaching. And was a player coach for a couple of years in Savannah, in the South Atlantic League. And following that, spent 4 years as the bullpen catcher in LA, and then got into managing. Managed a couple of years in rookie ball, a couple of years in low A, and then spent the next 13 years as the catching coordinator, and was asked following the 2018 season if I'd be interested in managing the AAA team when Bill Hasselman stepped down to do some other things. And it was perfect timing for me, for my family, just with our kids growing up and kind of doing their own thing. And my wife was excited about the opportunity, so decided to do that. And so it's been 26 awesome years in the organization. And last night was a special time for a lot of people in the organization. I was glad to have all the family home last night to watch the game and enjoy it together.
Yeah, and we're speaking here Wednesday, just so our listeners know. So this is one day after Game 6. Obviously, a lot of those memories still fresh here. But as you mentioned, getting that start, getting signed as a free agent in '94, the team was 6 years removed from a World Series title at that point. A lot of time has passed since then until they got their next one here in 2020. From a player development standpoint, as somebody who has, as you mentioned, deep roots in this system, both as a player, coach, coordinator, now manager, what was it like to just watch that game, knowing so many of those guys came up through the system? A lot of them played for you at OKC last year. Some of them were at the alt site this year. Just what was it like to watch that game at home?
Really, it was kind of surreal, just seeing how many guys on that field last night have come up through our system. Just the special time in our organization, the way we've been able to do things, the way that the front office has put together the roster, and the importance of the scouting and the player development. And, you kind of have to pinch yourself sometimes when you're watching guys that you've been a part of their development for so many years, finally culminating in a World Series championship. It's just, it was hard to describe, to be honest. I really didn't know what to feel other than just being excited to see all the hard work for those guys pay off, and, winning the World Series after so many years. It was just a special, special night.
And was there anybody you were maybe most proud of, somebody you either worked with for a long time or saw somebody grow from maybe a middling prospect to all of a sudden a World Series champion? Like, who were you thinking of most when that final out was recorded?
Honestly, Clayton Kershaw, just what he's meant to this organization, and seeing him from the time that he came into our system years ago, and what he's meant to our organization, the face of the franchise, and arguably one of the best pitchers of all time. And just, I know that had to be just a huge moment of joy for him to be able to celebrate. And I think everybody, if you asked the guys on the team who they were most happy for, it would be Clayton, and just what he's meant to this organization. Kenley Jansen, obviously he was a catcher. Got to spend a lot of time with him early on when I was coordinating, and developed that relationship with him. And obviously he transitioned into a pitcher, and has been around for so long in this organization. But there's so many guys that you're happy for. Obviously, guys that I had on the club in OKC last year, seeing them be a part of that. But yeah, for me, just watching Clayton and just the joy on his face and his body language, and just the sense of accomplishment for him was pretty special.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that moment being happy for him. And given all this experience you've had, one of the things that stood out to me the last couple of years with the Dodgers is that they are they are able to go get a Mookie Betts. They are able to make those trades and take on money. But also the player development system over the last couple of years has really been one of the standout systems in baseball and turning guys into legitimate prospects. What do you feel like has been the secret, or not necessarily secret, but what has been behind the success of the Dodgers player development the last couple of years? How would you describe the philosophy to success?
Well, honestly, I think it starts with our scouting department. They're able to identify the types of players that we value, and we get those guys in the system and just try to help them be the best versions of themselves. I think we allow them to be who they are. We have the information, we have the technology, we have the resources to pour into these guys and really focus on each player as an individual. Obviously, we have a philosophy as an organization on what we believe, but I feel like we were able to take each individual and apply to them what works best instead of using a cookie cutter approach for everybody. And but no doubt it starts with the scouts. They spend a ton of time identifying the types of guys that we want, get them into the system, and we just pour into them as best we can. And it's just been a great run for this organization over the last several years. The talent that we get into the system and the coaches that we have in player development, the instructors we have in player development, and just the amount of time we get to spend with these guys and the resources that we have to pour into them.
Yeah, and speaking of those resources, how do you feel like things have grown since you first entered the system, as you say, as a 9-1-1 catcher? What have been the changes, not just in the game, but in the way the Dodgers treat the minor leagues and their prospects and their player development pipeline?
Well, there's so many things. Like the resources are endless. Whether it's from the strength and conditioning component, the nutrition, the things that we allow guys to do as far as giving them access to the technology, whether it be motion capture type stuff, Rapsodo, Edgertronics. Like if there's a thing that we feel like is going to help us as an organization in player development, and if you have an idea, the one thing that I'll say is they'll let you try whatever you feel like is going to help our organization get better if it makes sense. The amount of people that they have brought in, whether it's adding extra staff to each affiliate to give more guys individual time to help in their development, our research and development people, the people that they've brought in to help us understand how the body works as far as maybe pitching or hitting or catching or infield. Like it's just amazing to me what Andrew Friedman in the front office has done as far as providing the resources to not only the players, but to the coaches to help us learn how to coach better. And if we're coaching better, obviously the players are going to benefit from that. But yeah, if you have an idea and it makes sense, they let you go all in with it. And it's just an incredible place to be right now. The Dodger organization, I feel like, is the best place to be. I know every organization thinks highly of themselves, but I'm just so thankful to be a part of something that's so special right now. And, every year you go into spring training, you feel like you have an opportunity to do what we did last night, and that's to win a World Series.
And speaking of, if you have an idea, they allow you to take it and run with it using the resources that you have. Can you think of a specific example of that, either from maybe this year at the alt site or last year with Oklahoma City, where that was really put into practice?
Well, the one thing I feel like has really benefited us, like, we put what we R&D coaches at each affiliate, guys that can take information off of the computer or off of TrackMan, off of Rapsodo, off of Edgertronics, and they allow somebody like myself who is not as tech savvy. They break down the information. They give it to me. They give it to the strength coaches. They give it to the position coach. They give it to anybody who is part of that player's development. And we come up with a plan as a group. And I feel like for me, it's been a huge benefit because it's not just relying on one person to help get the job done. It's a collaborative effort among the group, and I think we do as good a job as anybody of taking everybody that's involved in the development of that player, putting our heads together and coming up with a plan to help that player get better. So there's so many different things. It's just I just think the collaborative effort is a big deal for us.
And going back to your experience as a catching coordinator, two big pieces of this Dodger team were Will Smith and Austin Barnes. Will Smith coming up as a draft pick, Austin Barnes acquired from outside the organization, but spent a little bit of time at OKC and got to work with you a little bit as a catcher. Just talk about their growth and what allowed them to become a really exciting tandem behind the plate, both being able to work defensively and as DHs, flipping between those two spots. You know, what do you remember about where they were in the minors and where they got to as now World Series catchers?
Well, first of all, I just want to commend Austin Barnes. Like, I texted him last night after the game. Like, what he went through last year was very humbling for him. Having played for us in the two previous World Series and being a big part of where they were to being sent to Oklahoma City. We had some really good talks last year about, just continuing to figure out, how to get back to where he was before. It was a tough time for him. And, just texting him after the game last night, how proud I was of him for sticking to it. He's such an incredible competitor, and he was such a huge part of what happened this year. And to see him have the success he did this year and be such a big part of that, I felt so happy for him. His relationship with Will is outstanding. They work well together. They pull for each other. And as far as Will, obviously coming up through our system as a first-round draft pick, he's a guy that you saw early on had a chance to be a very, very defensive player. I don't think I expected to see the offensive production that he's put at this point in time in his career, but his development last year defensively after a brief stint in AAA in 2018, the year he had last year and the numbers he put up. And then when he went to LA, the numbers he put up and continued to do that this year, I don't know if anybody could have foreseen that this early in his career, but it's been amazing just to watch him. And like I said, those two guys work so well together. Their relationship's great. It's a good tandem to have for sure.
And one other catcher I want to touch on real quick. Keibert Ruiz didn't get on the World Series roster, was kind of part of that taxi squad. I think he got in one postseason roster as a third catcher, but was taken off after that. You have a personal relationship with him. He's stayed with your family in the past. You guys have really taken him in. What did you see from him, both at the alt site this year and just getting him prepared to be a guy who played a very brief time in the major leagues? What did you see from his development in 2020?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me, and I think everybody saw it right away when we came back after quarantine and we were at USC, was the development of his ability to hit the ball out of the ballpark. He's always been a good bat-to-ball type hitter, very low punch-out rate, didn't walk a lot, but he doesn't swing and miss. But sometimes that would get him in trouble because he is so good with the bat-to-ball skill. A lot of ground balls to the pull side. And the one thing that jumped off the page right away when we got back to work and spring training 2.0 and the alternate site, he was hitting a lot of balls over the fence in our inner squads, a lot less ground balls to the pull side. And I know he did a lot of work with Brownie and Robert at CBR, I think, as things started to open back up, and really kind of revamped his lower half in his swing. And it just got him more consistent in getting the ball in the air and hitting for power. And it was funny because the day that he was going to debut, I talked to a reporter briefly before the game, and he asked me the same question. I'm like, his ability to hit the ball out of the park is real now. And, of course, his first at bat in Anaheim, he hit a home run. And, offensively, it's just I think he's understanding that just because he can hit every pitch that they throw up there doesn't necessarily mean that he has to try and hit every pitch they throw up there. I think he was more selective, understanding his swing better. just driving the ball with more authority.
All right, well, we've kind of touched on this so far, but you have a little bit of hindsight now. It's been a couple weeks since the regular season ended and things wrapped up at USC. Take us through what the alt site was like, just going through that, far from a regular minor league season, obviously, far from a regular situation by any means. But what was the day in and day out like there, and how are you going to remember that unique, hopefully we don't have to do that again, but that unique time in baseball?
Yeah, it was definitely different. I don't think anybody was sure what it was going to look like at the beginning. Obviously, a lot of protocols that we had to stick to, the testing every other day, basically to and from the hotel and nothing more than that. But it was kind of like an instructional league setting early on, guys just getting their work in. And then we started having a lot more of the simulated games. But even that became a grind for those guys because you're seeing the same guys every day. There's a mix of, AA, AAA guys who might end up going up. And then we had some of our drafted guys from 2020 that were there, some young pitchers, position player. And those guys were like trying to make up innings that they missed because we didn't have a season. So you had a wide range of experience there. And then you had guys that maybe the big league team was going on the road for a couple of days and a pitcher that wasn't going to make the trip needed to throw a pin or throw a live BP. So it was constantly changing from day to day what was going on. And even after maybe an inter squad that ended at 2:00, a couple of guys would jump in their car and drive to Dodger Stadium and get live at bats off of a pitcher with the big league club that needed to throw. And, when the team went on the road, they were obviously going to take guys with them from the taxi squad. And so then we were shorthanded as far as bodies go. So you had coaches playing positions on defense during inter squads. I'm catching bullpens because we were short of catchers when they went on the road. So, yeah, I think guys did a great job of being flexible. Nobody complained about it. Obviously, it got to be a grind because, like I said, you're seeing the same guys every day as far as pitchers, hitters. But I will say the guys made the most of it. The staff that we had out there was great. The energy was great. But hopefully we don't have to go through that again and we can have real baseball next year.
And for all intents and purposes, it was held behind closed doors. So, we don't get these minor league stats of seeing guys grow. And you touched on Ruiz's
right.
Power made a jump this year. I talked to Cody Hosey a couple weeks ago, and after Gavin Lux made comments that he seemed to be spraying the ball over the park. Who else is somebody you feel like stood out who would have been maybe a breakout prospect this year if they had been able to go to a Tulsa or a Rancho, Great Lakes, Oklahoma City, wherever? Who is somebody you feel like stood out behind closed doors?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing that was actually good for me being able to be at the alternate site because we did have some younger players like a Cody Hosey that maybe I wouldn't have gotten to see as much because they wouldn't have been with me until a couple of years from now. So it helped me get to know them, see what they were about. Cody, I think Gavin Lux is right on. This dude can really hit, can really defend at third base, slide him over to short. Very impressed with him. And another guy like right off the bat, like that stood out was Mike Bush. Mike, did I say that right?
Yeah, Mike Bush. Yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking about old Mike Bush we had here years ago. But yeah, Michael Bush out of UNC. Just the plate discipline that he showed, his bat-to-ball skills, his ability to drive the ball. Spent a ton of time working at second base to improve his defense and made huge strides defensively just because he was able to get the reps in on a daily basis, kind of like an instruction league setting early in the mornings, getting his work in, and having guys like Sean Larkin, our infield coordinator, Jose Vizcaino, there working with him, Clayton McCullough. So he's getting a lot of one-on-one attention. But yeah, his ability to hit, really, really impressive. Some pitching guys, our newly drafted guy out of Louisville, Bobby Miller, very impressive arm. a big, strong kid who, early on, he's facing guys in these inner squads who have a lot of more experience and guys that were AAA guys, big league guys. And I think it kind of woke him up a little bit facing guys who were a little bit more experienced. But he made adjustments after a couple of outings in those inner squads. And there were days that he would go out there facing these more experienced hitters and dominate them. And, so hats off to him for like making the adjustment and making the most of the opportunity. But it was a unique time getting to spend time around guys that maybe I wouldn't spend time around with a whole lot until a couple of years down the road. So it was good for me to get to know some of those younger players.
And we'll end on a couple quick ones, but one of the biggest stories to come out of Game 6 were some of the managerial decisions, and that was true of all of the World Series. I'm not going to ask you to what would you have done with Blake Snell, but as a guy watching at home, as a former manager, what do you miss most about managing, being in the dugout, being in that game situation? And is there any part of you that's sitting there watching a game thinking like, this is what I would do right now, or are you able to shut that off when you're watching from home?
No, I don't think you can ever shut it off. You're always trying to think along with what's happening during the game. And, it was funny. My oldest son and I were sitting there talking through the game as certain situations would come up. And I would actually ask him, hey, what are you going to do right here? 3-1, 1 out. Are you going to start the runner? Are you going to play your infield in here? Are you going on contact? And like seeing how quick he can answer the question because you're trying to think ahead of what you're going to do before it happens. I don't think you can ever turn that off. You're always watching it from that perspective as a manager or coach, and just trying to see like if what you would do matches up with what's actually going to happen. So I don't think that ever goes away.
And we'll end on this one. Going back to when you were first signed back then in '94, this is the first time that we can officially say this. The Dodgers are a World Series organization. What do you feel like changes about the organization, or has anything changed because now that Commissioner's Trophy is, belongs to the entire Los Angeles organization?
I just think like the amount of effort, the amount of time, the amount of resources that have gone into this. And like I said, there's been some people around for a long time that have been waiting for this. And for me, after the game last night, just kind of taking it all in and watching the guys in the post-game interviews, I think the one thing that I take away from all this, obviously, is thankful that we were able to accomplish it. But I think we're set up to do this for a long time. What Andrew Friedman has put together in the front office, I think they've put us in a position to be successful for a long time. I don't feel like it's, we won a series and it's going to be another 30 years. I don't think that's what it is. I think we're going to have multiple opportunities to do this over the next several years, and they've set us up to be successful for years to come.
Well, it certainly feels like it from somebody outside the organization, so I can imagine what it feels like somebody inside the organization as well. Well, Travis Barbary, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time, especially one day after a big World Series win for the Dodgers. Enjoy the start, the official start now of the offseason down there in South Carolina. I'm sure we'll catch you down the line.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
See, this is the problem when Tyler isn't here. Tyler's gotten very good at the transitions and intros, and I am not that. So anyways, Ben is here. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hello, Sam. Good to talk to you. And missing Tyler and his warm, comforting presence already.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to drag me later for this. He got very upset last time when we said we spread gossip amongst ourselves about him. So we're going to keep that off mic again this time. But yeah, Ben, just how are things going with you? We're just kind of officially now in baseball offseason mode. This is going to be a very interesting offseason for many reasons. But yeah, how are things going here for you as we get into late October, early November?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to think. On one hand, we've been dealing with an off season since basically a year ago around this time in minor league baseball. But now we are into what is the most official portion of the off season, as we hope for normalcy in 2021. I think for me, and I think a lot of us at MILB.com, we've just, game of adjustments, to use a cliche. So kind of just staying in my own world and use another cliche, focusing on what I can focus on, controlling what I can control. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good rhythm. And weird to think, late October, it's an off season by any metric right now. Traditionally a pretty slow time of the year, but I think because we've had so much time to adjust to things being a little slower, it's also conversely maybe not as slow as it otherwise would be, because we already got our off-season sea legs underneath us and are ready to just keep on cruising, keep on moving, and keep on pumping out the good stuff, even under these very strange, adverse, anomalous circumstances.
Yeah, and speaking of the good stuff, you came out with a story this week, as part of your weekly features about the Black Play-by-Play Broadcaster Grant and Scholarship Fund. We had Adam Giardino on the show when he first started this to touch base on that. You did a story expanding on that a little bit a couple months ago as well. Now you wrote up a little bit of an update on how things are going there. They now have nonprofit status. They've raised a whole bunch of money. What can you tell us about this update?
Yeah, I wrote this article because, I think a phenomenon we see a lot, especially on social media, is a good idea comes out, everyone goes out of their way to praise it. And then sometimes, I think it kind of falls by the wayside later and people forget that it exists, or the initial optimism for the good cause in the first place just kind of, it never reaches its potential and kind of peters out. So I think it's important when there's a good idea in the world at large, but especially within the niche that I cover, to stay at it and provide updates. So that's what I did with this story. It was announced back in June, the Black Broadcaster Play-by-Play Grant. We did a story about it. As you said, you had its founder, Adam Giardino, on the podcast. He's the broadcaster for the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders. And the initial idea was basically just to go from within his pool of broadcasting peers and hope to raise enough money to get $3,000 that would be a seasonal grant for an aspiring Black broadcaster trying to break into the ranks in minor league baseball, a $500 a month stipend, if you will. So a pretty modest goal, but still a pretty ambitious thing to try with no experience in something like that. But it got a great response, as you may recall, did really well on social media. Within a week, they'd raised $15,000. That number is up to $25,000. So in writing this article, I kind of want to just now 4+ months later, say, okay, here's where the Black Play-by-Play Broadcaster Grant is now, and here's what they want to do going forward. First and foremost, it is a mouthful, but the official name of the initiative now is the Black Broadcaster Play-by-Play Grant and Scholarship Fund, because they did so well in fundraising right out the gate. They could easily provide the grants, the $3,000 for if and when things are normal and we have a normal minor league season, which of course we will at some point. So that grant will be used to help out a Black broadcaster in 2021. And then they added a scholarship program on top of that because the fundraising went so well. 3 $1,000 scholarships right now for Black students who are in broadcasting or interested in pursuing it. And, to do something like that, you just can't announce it. So Adam and his team of volunteers, they spent, who knows how many hundreds of hours creating a database of people to reach out to all around the country in college, communications departments, athletic departments, to make sure they got the word out about this scholarship. So the application process for that is still going, and it expires, I think, or ends, I think, next month or November 1st. So they will then be choosing who gets these 3 $1,000 scholarships. And then on top of that, even if you don't get a scholarship, there are 60 current broadcasters who are interested in a mentorship program. So now it is, to even be more of a mouthful, the Black Play-by-Play Broadcasters Grant, Scholarship, and Mentorship Program, where there's established broadcasters all over the country already ready to volunteer their time to be mentors for people looking to break in or who are just starting out their careers. So that's why I wrote the article. I just wanted to give a little more publicity. People forgot about it back when it was announced in June. I know a lot has happened in the world since June. To remind people it exists, and it's just like a really cool initiative to support going forward. And there's still so much more that can be done. And that was in talking to Adam, one of the things he said is, a big part of their to-do list after they raised so much money was to establish themselves with the IRS, officially as a nonprofit, as a 501c3. Because if you're now doing fundraising and looking to hit up, companies and corporations and going for larger entities, you do have to have these official nonprofit statuses in order to get the donations. So, there's been a lot of work involved. It's really cool what's going on so far. There's a 6-member board of directors for the organization, which includes 2 Black play-by-play men at the major league level, Rob Ford and Dave Sims. So getting a lot of people involved, having a lot of applicants for the scholarship program, a lot of donations, a lot of mentorship available. And it's just a really cool thing to be cliche about it. It's just one guy having an idea in the wake of the season getting canceled. And here we are talking about it in late October with all this has happened. I think it's, inspiring in its own way.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's been really cool to see it take off. And to piggyback off what you started out as saying is sometimes these things start out and they seem like a good idea for a couple of days, and then either they don't get the support or they peter out, or whatever happens. To see this continue to get strength is awesome and amazing. And the fact that we're still talking about this months after it started and that they are really going to follow through on this, it has been tremendous. If people want to either get involved with it somehow, either continue to add to the fund's coffers, or look for these mentorship opportunities or apply for scholarships or the aid itself, how do they do that, Ben?
Well, check out my article, for self-promotion, that's of course up on the site, milb.com. The website itself is blackpxpfund.com. PXP, of course, meaning play-by-play. So you can check out the full website, blackpxpfund.com, and check out the parameters of, applying for the grant for the scholarship, getting involved if you're already in broadcasting in terms of mentorship or things like that. That's a good place to start. And, it starts with Adam Giardino, who started this, but there's a lot of other people involved, and you can see the board of directors and the contact, other people to contact, and, go from there if you're interested in this sort of thing. And of course, they're still soliciting donations, and this will just continue to grow.
Yeah. And we can't stress that enough, that if you are an aspiring broadcaster out there, a Black broadcaster who could apply for this, please do. We'd love to add your voice to minor league baseball. A more diverse minor league baseball is a better minor league baseball, and really hope this fund continues to grow from here and really spreads its wings in 2021. But this is a really great start in 2020. Ben, on to your next story. You've done 2 of these so far. This will be your 3rd. Looking back at the promos of the decade, we talked about 2010 and 2011. Now let's talk about 2012. You start out your story, which is coming out today on Thursday when people listen to this, about 2 kind of unique home run derbies, one of which in Charleston isn't that unique anymore because it's been borrowed by other organizations in other leagues, which is a sign of just how successful it was in 2012, but also one in Reading that I don't think has been done again. What can you tell us about these?
Yeah, as we've been talking about these year-by-year promo reviews, it's interesting to look back and see the things that were trends at the time, things we thought might become huge trends and didn't. Last week we were talking about how in 2011, the Fort Wayne Tin Caps had give everyone 3D glasses, and it seemed, and then you could watch 3D entertainment on the video board, and it seemed like that's going to become a big thing and real common as part of the game day experience. And we don't really see that anymore. Likewise, we don't really see these crazy home run derbies as much as I might have thought we would going back to 2012. They started in 2011. The Quad Cities River Bandits had a crazy home run derby with targets on the field, like a dunk tank and beer kegs and whatnot. So, teams, I think, were picking up on that energy, started to think more and more outside the box on home run derbies. Kind of along those lines, they were just the Reading Phillies back then. Now they're the Fightin' Phils. But the Reading Phillies did this crazy, and you may recall it going viral at the time back in 2012, a much more innocent era of human history. But the Reading Phillies for the Eastern League All-Star Game just did this thing, this crazy home run derby with, food stations on the field. And what was going on there? They had musical performances, an intern in a crane with like targets to hit, a dunk tank as well, just all sorts of, crazy things going on in Reading. And then even more viral and even more unique, the Charleston River Dogs hosting the South Atlantic League All-Star Game in 2012. They moved their home run derby from the ballpark to the deck of a decommissioned aircraft carrier, and participants in the home run derby hit home runs from the deck of this aircraft carrier, the USS Yorktown. and they hit them into the ocean, the home runs into the ocean, where they were then retrieved, of course, by volunteers on jet skis. And for some reason, I've always loved the phrase volunteers on jet skis. And this was the first minor league baseball promotion I'm aware of that utilized volunteers on jet skis to pick baseballs out of the ocean after home run derby participants hit them into the ocean from the deck of a decommissioned aircraft carrier. So there you go. Those were two big ones in 2012.
And it's funny just seeing how some of these other ones have aged. Like the Lake Elsinore Storm had a post-game mass Tebowing, which meant not a very different thing in 2012, but it was like honoring a football player. And now here we are in 2020, it would be honoring a Mets minor leaguer. It's just funny how the world works out in that way. And the other one that stands out to me is the Arkansas Travelers Luke Van Mill growth chart, which is sad now because he's sadly passed away. But we used to have a growth chart of him in our office, did we not?
I don't think it was Luke Van Mill. It was a one that was given away, I think, by the Princeton Rays. I want to say it was like Brent Honeycutt, or I can't remember. I don't think we had the Luke Van Mill one, which I always wanted. Luke Van Mill, was 7'1", and always wished I could have seen him pitched. And he was from the Netherlands. Really unique story, being a Dutch ball player who was over 7 feet tall. Hung around in the minor leagues for a lot of years. That growth chart was a great giveaway. And then just about a year and a half ago, he was in some sort of hiking accident and died. So it is, it's a reminder, even these kind of frivolous articles looking back on goofy minor league giveaways, even that can be a bit of a sad exercise. But in a way, in a weird way, I thought that's why I wanted to highlight it, just to say, RIP Luke Van Mill, and remember that he was just a really notable player in the minor leagues, and one that a lot of people remember.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the other fascinating thing about this is that you might look at somebody's baseball reference page and say, or their MILB.com stats page, and think like, okay, they spent some years here, they spent some years here, they spent some years here, they never made the majors. Their career is what it is. But when guys spend a decent amount of time in these places, they leave an impact, and especially when they stand out in the way like Luke Van Mill did. But even if it seems like, oh, they never made the majors, what was their career good for? That impact is certainly worth something and worth remembering, especially now. The one I'll end on here, Ben, is the Stockton Ports presidential seat cushion giveaway, which happened in an election year in 2012. We now sit here in an election year in 2020, but fans would have to sit on the face of the presidential candidate they did not like. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's America. It's a free country. Do what you will. This was kind of an edgy promotion in 2012, and I can't imagine it being done in 2020, just because things have gotten that much more divisive and partisan. Divisive. I still say divisive without thinking about it, but I think it's divisive. Anyhow,
either way.
Yeah, either way. The Stockton Ports gave away two-sided seat cushions, and on one hand, on one end or one side was Obama, and on the other side was Mitt Romney. So the premise was that then you could sit on the face, I guess, in a sign of disrespect of the candidate you did not support. I'm not sure how well the logic works out, because even the side you weren't sitting on would just be then face down on the ground or bleachers or wherever you happen to be sitting. So it was a very strange thing, but I remember covering it quite a bit in 2012 just because it was so ridiculous. It's the sort of item, I mean, I live in a New York City apartment, as do you. I don't know where I'd find room for such a things, but those are the kind of item that I look back on and I'm kind of like, wow. I wish I had, if I lived in a house, I would like to have things just, the total ephemera of, past minor league seasons, things like a 2012 presidential election seat cushion given away by a minor league team, in which the premise was to sit on the face of the candidate you do not support. A lot to unpack there. I think we can leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I agree with you with the idea of, if you're sitting on the face of it, that means that person is facing up. So if you were to leave to go get a hot dog, a beer, whatever, it would look like you are sitting in a Romney or Obama seat, which means you support that person. Like that's probably a reason why I was left in 2012. But I also like envisioning, as you say, like, I don't have enough space for minor league ephemera, but maybe if we hoarded some and then opened up an odd shop or a bar when people can go into bars again and just filled it with minor league things, maybe that's the thing we can do here in Brooklyn.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome to have a bar just filled with this kind of stuff all over the place? That would be great. Let's go into business. Let's talk off air and devise a business plan.
Hey, I'm saying, we could find a place down by Coney Island, which is the home of American ephemera, and put it right near the home of the Cyclones. I think we got something here.
This is perfect. I love it. I already have a name for it too. Ben and Friend.
Wow. I mean, we can't call it Ben and Sam's because then it just becomes BS. But we'll workshop.
We'll work on it. There's a lot of time to go. But as you were saying earlier, you sometimes just a simple idea, and then all of a sudden you're creating something that changes the course of the rest of your life. And I think we might look back on this conversation as the moment the rest of our lives changed.
Yep. So save this episode, everybody. We got some work to do.
And thanks, sorry, man. Tyler, you couldn't have been here for this historic moment. But he can drink for free.
He can drink. Wow. Okay. All right. Catch you next week, Ben.
Bye, Sam.
We've had a very interesting and long and convoluted pre-interview conversation as we get to this segment of this week's episode of the show before the show. Our minor league rider spotlight. Josh Jackson joins the show. Before we dive into Josh's story that we're going to discuss here momentarily, while I have two of MILB.com's resident New Englanders here, I have to ask you both about a thing that came up on minor league baseball Twitter this week. Are you ready?
Yes.
Not really, because I don't like where this is going, but go ahead.
Oh, hi, Josh. First. Hi.
I'm ready. I'll listen to your.
Okay. So, and this is not my standard, I'm going to make fun of your accents. And yeah, we get it. You didn't win a World Series for a million years. You've won like 18 since then. Be quiet. My question is, so as we all know, we discussed last week with Benjamin Hill, the Pawtucket Red Sox moving to Worcester next year, moving from Rhode Island to Massachusetts. But there was a
pronounced Worcester, Tyler.
Oh, Worcester sauce. There was a stink, if you will, on minor league baseball Twitter that I saw, where some people seem to be mad about the Woo Sox having gotten the sod for their new stadium from New Jersey. And there were a lot of people saying, oh, if only they could have gotten some sod. Can't imagine there's anywhere around here that has good sod. Is New England sod a thing? That's a thing?
Sam, do you want to handle this one?
I mean,
everybody just fast forward your podcast app. There's a 15 second button. Just hit the 15-second button right now.
Hit it about 5 times.
You mean Tyler, talking about grass isn't that exciting? Is that what you're saying?
For a special sod edition of
Tyler, what you need to understand about New Englanders is that we are very proud people.
Wicked good sod.
Like, you could go to Georgia and get a peach, and we'd be like, what, we have no peaches here? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, we're not necessarily known for sod, because actually farming in New England was notoriously difficult because there were so many rocks in the ground. Like, the house I grew up on was built on a foundation of stones that were found on the property. Huh. So the idea that there's like lots and lots of sod.
It's very Johnny Appleseed sounding.
It very much is.
You want a peach, you go to Chelmsford. Let me just say it right now.
So it's not really like I was thinking like, oh, is this just one of those things that I was unaware of? Like, everybody knows, like, Idaho has potatoes and Jersey has corn and whatever.
Maine has potatoes, Tyler. No.
I was
to Sam's point, yeah, we're a provincial people.
But no way. I've never picked that out about you.
It's true. I'll concede to that point. And it's true too. I don't actually. I mean, let's take Sam's word for it with Massachusetts. I don't know, but I do know. Yeah, farming in Maine, potatoes, are a good crop for Maine because, the soil is not necessarily like free of. It's not necessarily a place that you're going to be able to grow anything.
Okay.
I remember, in terms of baseball, I went like the summer before my freshman year of high school. I played on in a camp for Cheverus High School. I didn't end up going to Cheverus High School, but my grandmother worked there, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll play on their, baseball team or whatever. And they were super proud of the clay on their infield.
Okay.
And it had been brought up from Florida.
Huh.
And
interesting.
Dude, that then and there wasn't like, there's clay in Westbrook. You don't. Westbrook has great clay.
Our clay's not good enough? Not good enough for you?
Right. Right. It wasn't that. It was like, this clay is so good, we brought it from Florida.
All right. I just, I was I had no idea. I actually wanted to know. But I get it. It's just because you people are weird. It's not a thing.
Proud. We call it proud.
Saying. Oh, proud. Right. That's what I meant.
Proud.
That's totally what I meant. But we do have two of our resident New Englanders here, and we're very excited to dive into a story with Josh. Thank you all for humoring me. To all the people who just hit the 30 seconds ahead button, they're like, man, that took a while. Humoring you about what? But let's get into a story that Josh wrote for the site, which ran earlier, actually technically last week now, on a debut season in a career that would become legendary, and one of those seasons that you look back on and think like, well, yeah, that figures. Juan Marichal, when he came to the United States before the dawn of his Hall of Fame big league career, a guy who went to the Midwest League and did basically what you would expect Juan Marichal would do to Midwest League hitters. This is another fascinating story, and there are a lot of layers to this story that go far beyond just baseball that we're going to get into. But Josh, kind of give us the rundown of, you went so deep as you always do with the historical stories of various sources and reading interviews and quoting from Juan Marichal's book and that type of stuff. What was kind of, when you went into this story and coming out of it, what were you hoping to learn about the dawn of his career, and what did you come away with?
So yeah, that's a great question to start with. I can't really remember what it was that made me say, oh, Juan Marichal, but we always are interested in, especially when minor league baseball isn't being written, looking into sort of the beginnings of careers of great players. And I did notice we hadn't written anything about Juan Marichal expressly before. And then you look, so I'm like, okay, well, did he even play in the minors? What was his path like? And, you take a look, and his path, as you said, was like, oh, this is what it looks like when a Hall of Famer plays, gets into minor league baseball, breaks into minor league baseball. So yeah, that's sort of what drove me there. And what I ended up learning, too, was a lot of the social stuff that you sort of alluded to, the off the field stuff. Although there's a lot of on the field stuff about the early evolution of his game too. But for me, what really did stand out was, you think about a player coming to the United States from the Dominican Republic in 1958, and there's two things that sort of enter my mind. The first thing is that, so we're 11 years after, 1947, after Jackie Robinson, to use a common phrase, broke the color line. And so the idea that sort of can implicitly come along with that phrase is that once Jackie Robinson played in the major leagues, there were no sort of race or ethnic-based challenges for players, that if a player had a certain level of skill, then no sort of prejudice or attitudes or number of other players of color on the big league team that he's signed with would keep him in the minors or keep him from being signed. And if you read about baseball and baseball history often enough, that's just not true. So that was one thing I was interested in. And the other thing that I was interested in was, that he didn't really have a path to follow. Now, obviously, we know it's widely known that the Dominican Republic loves baseball and produces a ton of the world's best baseball players. It's a nation that loves baseball and is probably more united in their love of baseball. I mean, I think I can say definitely more united in their love of baseball than the United States is today. That said, the first Major League Baseball player to come from the Dominican Republic, it's Ozzie Virgil. I'm trying to look up real quickly. Yeah, he made his debut at the end of the 1956 season, September 1956. And he wasn't a pitcher like Marichal, but so, 2 years before Marichal comes to the States is the very first time, in the modern era that a player from the Dominican Republic plays in Major League Baseball. So he was definitely a pioneer in that sense, which gets, I think, overlooked and forgotten because of how long and how spectacular his career was. We do acknowledge it. I mean, it's widely sort of known, I think, among baseball fans. He's the first Dominican player to enter the Hall of Fame, but he's one of the first Dominican players in Major League Baseball, period.
And along the way, becoming that, blazing that trail, as you mentioned there, Josh, was getting started in the minors. And you tell stories of what it was like for him going on that first bus trip from Florida up to Michigan City in Indiana. And also what happened when he got there and how he had to stay in a different place than the white players did because, he was a dark-skinned Dominican player. This was, as we were mentioning before we started this call, this is about a decade after Jackie Robinson, but it's not like Jackie Robinson's arrival on the scene just hand-waved away a lot of the racism that was going on in the middle of the 20th century in baseball. What was it like for Marichal when he was getting going? And like you say, he didn't have like a Pedro Martinez or a David Ortiz or another Dominican player to look up to and call and be like, how did you deal with this in the lower minors? So going through that prejudice and trying to figure it out on his own, what did you learn about that journey or part of his journey?
Before I go any further, I want to sort of shout out / plug the work of Dr. Adrian Burgos, who's a history professor who I interviewed for this story and who has multiple books that you should check out if you're interested in the story of Latin, Latinos in general in baseball and Latinos in the United States. One of them is called Playing America's Game, Baseball, Latinos, and the Color Line. It deals with a lot of the sort of issues that that you just sort of touched on, Sam. And it was also eye-opening for me to be able to have the great fortune to talk to Dr. Burgos about that journey, that Marichal went through in terms of adjusting to life in these weird United States where we have such complicated and such entrenched racism and such ideas about race that if you think about it, to an outsider in an era before there was, forget social media, before there was like reliable and accessible broadcast media available, it would have just been baffling. And also, I mean, the other thing is he's coming from the Dominican Republic, where at the time Rafael Trujillo was a dictator with sort of an iron hold on the country and was obsessed about sort of what his society looked like. And so I'm going to read, the quote from Burgos here. He's talking about one first coming to the United States and the background that he brought with him. He says, Dominicans, particularly darker skinned Dominicans, led a cloistered life because Trujillo was not letting them out. So much of that society was structured around what Trujillo wanted a life to look like. And you come here to the United States, he's saying, and have seemingly every opportunity open to you. That's sort of, and I'm taking a break from the quote now. That's sort of the idea of America, right? Is that, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave. And Jackie Robinson played in the big leagues, and every opportunity should be open to you, right? but there he is in Florida. He's in Sanford, Florida, and taking a bus across the South to Michigan City. And to get back to the quote, jumping back into the quote now, and yet there's Jim Crow, and there are cities in the North that have their own particular ways of limiting your opportunities. So, yeah, he did have to live with a Black family, rather than sort of stay in the housing that was provided for the team when he got to Michigan City in the Midwest League. And he wrote in his book that he loved that family. He had a wonderful time being with that family. They became friends in a lasting and meaningful sort of way. But that's not sort of the issue under discussion here. The issue is, he didn't get to stay with his teammates. He didn't get to do what everybody else on his team did. And he's coming, from a quote unquote cloistered life into the land of opportunity. And I don't know, for me, it's just, it kind of makes, well, obviously it makes my heart hurt, but it makes my head spin too, to kind of think about what that's like as a 20-year-old, trying to, just make sense of this country. And all the while, by the way, trying to play baseball, trying to make it as a pitcher in the Giant system.
Another thing that's so fascinating, Josh, is you talk about the challenges that a guy would face just in that circumstance alone of where he is forced to live due to the color of his skin and the prejudice that he encountered because of that. That alone would be extraordinarily difficult and would push a lot of guys to the point where they would decide that it just wasn't worth it. But Juan Marichal is also in a circumstance where he doesn't speak the language either. And
right.
You're not really showing up, and there's some great quotes in here from Burgos who really kind of nails the point home, especially this one. He said, talking about how little communication Marichal was able to have with his family, he said, quote, "I asked Juan a couple years back, you left your mom in February. When was the next time you were able to talk to her?" He said, "September. Basically, I got to call her to let her know I was coming home, that the season's over." And then this is Burgos talking. He said, 50 plus years later, I could sense the way that hung on his shoulders. When you even nowadays see guys who come over from the DR or from Cuba or Venezuela or Puerto Rico or from Mexico, whatever it is, there is already such a cultural gap just because of that language barrier. How isolating was that for him too? Because Burgos points out, maybe there are a couple of Mexican restaurants in Michigan City, but there's no way he's walking into a place that's a Dominican restaurant. He's not getting food from home. He's not calling home and able to talk to his family. That must have been tremendously isolating.
For sure, and that's something that he's talked about, later in his life as well. And it's, I mean, it's, I don't want to minimize what players today go through in any way, because I still think it must just be one of the hardest things that we ask pro athletes to do, unrelated to their to whatever their actual sport is, to whatever their on-field skill is asking them to come in the United States, minor league cities where in some places, yes, there's a large Spanish speaking population, but in a lot of places, no, not really. I still think that's a huge obstacle to go over, but yeah, back then, again, even more challenging. The technology just wasn't there. Dr. Burgos, he also, in that conversation, this isn't in the story, but he talked about, I forget where exactly, but he had the privilege of seeing a phone bill from the end of Roberto Clemente's first major league season. And this was, his major league season. And I think it was like $100 and something. I mean, I have it here. The number isn't tremendously important. But it was a lot of money for short conversations. I think he said it was like 45 minutes over the course of a month of calls to Puerto Rico. And the Dominican Republic, of course, is a different country. It's higher telephone rates, and it's just like for a minor leaguer to be able to pay to talk to family
right
at that time would have just been impossible, out of the question. You wouldn't think about it, right? You would go from the time you show up in spring training to the time the season's over before you're able to hear the voice of your family and the people who raised you, and this is like your first time ever away from home. So in the face of sort of all of this, let's look at the baseball for a second.
Yeah.
Now that we've sort of given you the context to understand what he was going through, in the face of all of that, he pitches 245 innings in 35 games, and 28 of those are starts. He has a 1.87 ERA. He wins 21 games. He strikes out 246 in the 245 innings.
Pretty good. That's,
it's like, you look at those numbers and you raise your eyebrows and you go, wow, there's a great one. Hold on to him. It makes sense that the guy who did that became Juan Marichal, that who we all know. And then you think about everything every aspect of his life that he was immersed in, every second that he wasn't on a ball field for that summer. And I think it just becomes, just unbelievably impressive. There's a shortage of words in describing how impressive I find a performance like that, and in the context of a 20-year-old kid from the Dominican Republic coming to the United States in 1958 and doing that in the Midwest League. He wins the Rookie of the Year award for the league, and then he goes home, plays some winter ball, and he's named the Rookie of the Year in the Dominican Winter League too, which that's a bigger deal. And I believe, I don't have this right in front of me either, but I'm fairly confident that Felipe Alou, they're lifelong friends basically, played with him on Escogido that year and was named the Athlete of the Year. But I think, of course, Escogido lost, I think, in the playoffs too. Anybody?
Estrellas Orientales.
No, to their
Licey.
There you go.
Secret.
Yeah.
Estrellas, for anybody who's not boned up on Dominican Republic baseball, they're the pre-2016 Cubs, basically. They never win. They've made the finals a lot, and they still never win. But Licey is, kind of one of the other legendary teams.
Licey is basically the dynasty.
Yeah. One of the other things that really stands out, Josh, in this story that amazed me, and it's kind of a quick thing. If you're not reading the story real closely, you might miss it. But this is not a Juan Marichal who had either the leg kick that he became known for or the screwball that he became known for in this 1958 season. He was a sidearmer, and he talked in his autobiography about how he basically threw a sidearm fastball and a sidearm cutter, or a curve rather, and that was pretty much it. He was this good, then pretty much turned himself into an entirely different pitcher and was even better somehow.
Right, that is an interesting other note here, that we wouldn't although, we recognize those numbers, and we've all said things like, oh, you see those numbers and you go, oh, there's Juan Marichal. Those are Juan Marichalian numbers. Otherwise, we wouldn't recognize the 1958 Marichal because, he doesn't have sort of his trademark stuff in terms of both repertoire and accoutrement to his delivery. It was next year in Sam Dykstra country, pitching for Double-A Springfield.
As it is famously known, yes.
Right. Hashtag Sam Dykstra country. that, his manager, Andy Gilbert, kind of said to him, well, why don't you try throwing overhand? Let's see what happens when you throw overhand. And what happened was that leg kick. It was kind of he couldn't throw overhand naturally without, going into that leg kick. I stumbled in my speech here because I just got up and stood up like without thinking about it and tried to do it here in my kitchen and almost fell over. But but it's like that's what his body had him do when he tried to throw overhand. And then of course he starts tweaking over several years starts sort of tweaking what happens if I lift the leg this high, what happens if I hold the foot like this, do I conceal the ball better or improve more of a distraction this way or that way. But yeah, that's a major development of his minor league career for sure, is the next year in Springfield, when, by the way, he's also incredible. I think, he missed the Eastern League strikeout record by 11 and had a 2.39 ERA with 8 shutouts. But yeah, it's that year where he starts throwing overhand and also starts working on a screwball. And then we really get into, here comes Juan Marichal. The year after that, he's in the Pacific Coast League for a little bit, and then, he's in the Giants, and that's that.
Yeah, I told Tyler that I was going to take the last question here, but I just it was going to be about his time in Springfield. So Josh, you nailed it there at the end. I just want to note that, like all things, this both started and ended in New England. So there we go.
It's true. How was the sod in Springfield at the time?
That's what I was wondering. What was the situation there with the sod?
I'm sure
transcript said the sod up in Springfield could be.
I'm sure because it was Springfield sod. It was exquisite. It was the finest sod in all of the Eastern League. I will hear no other arguments. Thank
you. Sorry,
frosty sod there in April.
Sorry to tell both of you, but when I hear Springfield, I just think of Missouri because of the good and faithful Springfield Cardinals. Why the Double-A Texas Springfield Cardinals, Josh?
There's a Springfield in Missouri.
There's a Springfield everywhere, I believe.
There is a Springfield everywhere.
I think there's a Springfield in every state. I don't think that's actually true. There's
a whole TV show about the joke.
I've heard that supposedly. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, I was going to tweet this earlier today. I know that I have tweeted it before, but a fun party trick, and since we're not allowed to have parties, you can just do it on Twitter now. You can submit any Simpsons quote from season 1 through 10 to @JoshJacksonMILB on Twitter, and he will know the line that follows from any episode of the only seasons of The Simpsons that are worth watching, which are 1 through 10. So give that a shot.
I think you're overpromising there. But
overpromise and underdeliver.
Right. I think I maybe. I think if anybody tried to stump me, they'd stump me.
But try, people. Try
exactly.
again.
Give it a shot. Josh is on Twitter @JoshJacksonMILB, and this story is really fantastic. It goes so deep into that formative era of Juan Marichal's career, and you can read it right now at MILB.com. Great stuff as always, man. We'll do it again soon.
All right, thank you guys for having me, and thank you all for listening out there in Radio Land.
Yes, did it. Before we wrap up this week's episode of the show before the show, it was Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News who tweeted that fact about Dodgers pitchers, starting pitchers to the postseason, all coming up and playing the entirety of their careers in the system. And so I wanted to make sure that we credited him. Before we get out of here, Sam has our nationwide prospect fact of the week.
Yeah. So this week's fun fact, I was going to bring up that Dodgers one, but Tyler so presciently and correctly brought it up in the first segment. So it's because it's such a good fact, it deserved to be up there. I'm going to just bring it back to Randy Arozarena. Why not? This is our last technical postseason show, really. So let's just bask in the glory that was Randy Arozarena. And I'm going to say this knowing full well that this was the longest postseason we've ever had. It was the biggest postseason we've ever had. There was every chance that somebody was going to set these postseason records. The fact that it was a guy who was a rookie playing his first year in a new organization just makes it all the more fascinating and adds another layer than just saying like, oh yeah, I guess Corey Seager was always going to set records. No, this is Randy Arozarena doing this before he even loses his prospect eligibility, which is fascinating. So Arozarena set postseason records with 10 homers, 29 hits, and 64 total bases over 20 games. These ones aren't records, I don't think, but I'm going to mention them anyway. He batted .377, had a .442 on base percentage, a slugging percentage of .831, and an OPS of 1.273. Again, this is, he did all this over 20 games. This year during the regular season, he only played 23 games for the Rays. Notably, tested positive for COVID, was delayed in his start to the year, didn't come up until the season was basically halfway done. But for him to take charge like this and to do it not only on a game's biggest stage, but against the best teams in baseball in the AL, and then doing so well against the Dodgers was great for him. Tyler, I'm going to throw this question to you just to kind of round out this discussion. And maybe it's a thing we're going to talk about a lot this offseason. I don't know. But Randy Arozarena is still a prospect. And for much of the season, he was a fairly middle of the pack Rays prospect. I would say there's no doubt he's a top 100 prospect, but like, how far would you be willing to go given what he's done so far and how we've seen him perform?
How far in terms of how high would I rank him? Top 100?
Yeah.
That is a great question because he's number 19 in the Rays organization as noted right now. So the Rays, as of this recording, have how many top 100 prospects in total? I can go do that, but I have to tap dance while I find it. And then once I get there. Okay, so the Rays, as of right now, have this many top 100 prospects, 6 of them. Wander Franco, number 1. Brendan McKay, number 12. Vidal Brujan, number 41 overall. Xavier Edwards, number 67. Shane Baz, number 86. And Shane McClanahan, number 99. Shane McClanahan is the 6th ranked prospect, obviously, in the organization, which means there are 13 spots in prospect listing format on MLB Pipeline between him and where Randy Arozarena entered this postseason. He's number 19. The guys between them are Brent Honeywell, name that we know very well, Nick Bitsko, who is a draft selection just from this year, the 24th overall pick, Joe Ryan, Josh Lowe, Greg Jones, Ronaldo Hernandez, JJ Goss, Alika Williams, Moises Gomez, Nick Schnell, Taylor Walls, and Kevin Padlow. All of those dudes right now, just in the Rays system, are between Randy Arozarena and the Rays' lowest ranked top 100 prospect. So Randy Arozarena is going to blow by all of them. But do I don't know if I would put Randy Arozarena in the top 80. I think his performance was ridiculous. But by the same token, I don't know. Am I crazy in thinking that way?
See,
he's vaulting 13 prospects just in his own system to crack the top 100. I don't think he's like a top 50 prospect now.
But that's the thing, though, is that we talk about all these guys in terms of their ceiling, and nobody has ever done this.
Right, exactly. We're evaluating something that literally has never happened before.
Yeah.
And Randy Arozarena finished the regular season really strong, too. He had an OPS over 1,000, hit 7 homers in the regular season, and then another 10 in the postseason. So he had a great stretch, but calling facts, he had a great 2 months of baseball. Does that mean that he is going to have a 20-year Hall of Fame career as he has looked for the last 2 months? Probably not.
No. Well, we don't know. We honestly don't know. I mean, I do think he's made some changes. The bat speed has always been there for him, but he's added power because I think he's added elevation. We even saw during these playoffs, he was hitting every fastball he saw. And then teams adjusted and started pitching him off speed. And then all of a sudden, he's flicking outside sliders over to into the stands in right field. So the adjustments he made me feel pretty confident about it. What I thought was like, I don't think you can put him like top 5 or anything like that. Where do I start to feel comfortable with him? And I was like, maybe number 30. That feels right to me, because at a certain point, number 30 right now is Emerson Hancock, right? Mariners top pick this year. He was number 6 overall. Above him is Marco Luciano, who has only played in short season ball so far. those guys both have considerable ceilings themselves. But even then you have to say, like, will they ever do anything like this? And I don't know if they will. And it would take a serious crash for Randy Arozarena to be like, yes, Emerson Hancock had a better, I don't know. It's a very difficult conversation. We don't have to do it. I don't envy, the guys,
the pipeline crew.
Yeah. Jonathan Mayo, Jim Callis, Mike Rosenbaum, everybody over there who do tremendous work in doing these rankings. People like to ask us, what's the difference between us and them? We like to focus a little bit more on the micro. We're talking about day-to-day minor league stuff. We're talking about the business of minor league baseball. We do a lot of different things. They're more on the macro of who are these guys? What is their long-term future? We mix in that as well. But I don't know. I really don't know. We've never had to do this before. It's really difficult. I really wish we could have seen more of him, but if we did, then he wouldn't be a rookie, or he wouldn't be a prospect anymore. And we wouldn't have to talk about this. So the other thing I will note very quickly is that Randy Arozarena is 25. So, some of these guys we're talking about still have years ahead of them in terms of growth. Randy Arozarena is coming up on the time right now in which a lot of outfielders hit their prime. So he could be really good for the next 3 years and start to tail off almost naturally, like anybody would. And that doesn't say anything about him and his future. It's just like, that's how the human body works. That's how athletes work over years and years and years of research. That's the thing we have to consider as well when we talk about his future. So yeah, I don't envy them in figuring that one out. And it's going to be fascinating to see that discussion. And in the end, rankings have failed Randy Arozarena before. They could fail him again. We could still be underestimating him when we say, like, no, he might not be the best prospect in baseball right now. He could prove us wrong at that. Who knows?
It's possible. But yeah, what a crazy, we'll never see a postseason like that again. Granted, he set so many of these records. He also played way more games than anybody else has ever played in a postseason, and we understand that. But still, what an insanely impressive last couple of months. He actually just a moment ago tweeted out a thank you to Rays fans in Spanish and in English, and just such an easy guy to like and to cheer for this year. And like I said at the top of the show, it felt good to feel good about things for a little while, Yeah. And now the cold, long winter awaits. So anyway, that'll do it for this week's episode of the show before the show. Get in touch with us, podcast at MILB.com. Sam's on Twitter at Sam Dykstra, MILB. I am at Tyler Maun. Please go vote. Do your duty and let us know if you do. Let us know if this podcast was the thing to push you over the line in voting. We will feel very good about ourselves. Right, Sam?
And we will feel very good about you. That's the focus is on you.
Exactly. That's even better.
Yeah. You will be strengthening this democracy. Again, I go to the top. I know there's a lot of apathy about voting, or there has been in the past. Hopefully this year it's changed. The early voting numbers have been fantastic. But one thing I always got a kick out of ever since I could start voting in 2008 was you look at the results and just knowing you are one of them, whether it was a runaway or whether it was close, just knowing my vote is in there somewhere, and that is history, and that gets to live on is really, really cool. Again, if you live in some of these swing states, your vote could very well decide the future of this country, which is an awesome power that we don't get to have every day. So make sure you exercise it. If you have the ballot at home because it's been mailed to you, get it off to a drop box or some other election facility. If you haven't voted yet, try to vote early. If you're waiting for election day, make sure you get there to your polling place early and stay in line as long as you need. We need your voice. We need your vote. Get out there.
That'll do it. He's Sam. I'm Tyler. We'll talk to you next week.